really important part of listening, right? Okay, if we can focus on the good things to do, that helps. You know, this is what you should do. Always try. First, try. You have to pay attention. You have to focus, right? You can always ask. But what about the problems? What kind of problems can you have when you are listening? Like if you think you need to practice listening, then it's because you know you don't always understand, right? So where does the problem come from? What don't you understand? There's one really easy place where you sometimes don't understand, and that's simply if the person that you're talking to doesn't really talk slow enough to catch all the words. Look like. Right. The difference between speaking and listening and reading and writing is that when you speak or listen, then somebody says it once and then it's gone, right? If you read, you can read it, okay, and then read it again. You can read it really slowly, right? But if you're listening, you can't always control the speed. So, what can we do about that? 有可能有这个问题，他会太快，他讲话太快。How do you say that in Chinese? He just talks too fast, right? 台湾来的外国人有很多会这样子。Right? They see you and you say hi, and then they think, oh, you can have a conversation in English, you can keep talking, and they just keep going and going, and then you just, right? Yeah. So, if this is a problem, what can we do about it? What are the most important words in any language? The most important words for you to say in any language. 最重要的字是什么？ Tiago. Right? If you just, right? The person will just keep talking and talking, and if you just keep, he will think that you understand everything, which could be a big problem. So the first thing that you have to be able to say is, tell, you know. Whenever I talk to my family in Taiwan, they always try to talk to me in Taiwanese. And I can understand some Chinese, but Taiwanese, oh, 真的跳了, right? I don't get it. So that's pretty much the first thing I say, and then they change to Chinese, right? 如果你可以说不好意思，听不懂的，帮忙可以吗？帮我说的可以吗？ If you can ask people to talk slower, then that will help a lot, right? So that's one way to control speed. Now, if we want to practice listening, then wouldn't it be great if you could have like a book that you could listen to, and then you could like stop and listen again, and you could make it go slower? Wouldn't that be great? Yeah? What do we call that? If you have a computer, then you can get almost anything as a sound file, right? And if you can put it on your computer, you can change the speed. This is actually a really important thing that a lot of teachers don't say anything about. But it's easy to do. Even on your cell phone, I'm sure you can do that, right? So if you have a magazine like Studio Classroom, and there's a CD with it, and you want to practice listening, but it's too fast, make it an MP3 or something and slow it down, right? It's the same thing if you want to watch the news. If it's on YouTube or CNN website or BBC, record it, put it on your computer and slow it down. It doesn't mean that you should always listen to it really slow, but if you don't understand anything, it really doesn't help you. So start slowing it down, and then when you can hear it clearly, then you speed up again, right? It's a great way to learn songs too. Okay? So this can be a big problem. What else can be a problem if someone is talking to you and you don't understand? Okay, if you can't say anything, if you can't speak, but 讲话跟听得懂不一样, right? It's not exactly the same. It's easier to listen than to speak, right? Because if you speak, you have to make the words. It's the same thing with reading and writing, right? Reading is easier. So, what other problems could we have?
Can't ask.
If you can't ask, okay. Well, what questions could we use? How could we ask? How can we ask? If somebody says something and you don't understand, do you need to use words? 一定要说，还是可以？ Right? Sometimes hand gestures help too. Just wait a moment. Right? That helps. What else can you do though? If there's a word that somebody says and you don't understand it, I need you to go to the kinesiology department. I need you to go to, if you hear that, kinesiology, you can ask it as one word, a question, right? If somebody uses a word you don't know, you repeat the word. But you can, because English doesn't have tones, 没有一声二声三声，所以如果会用一个字 kinesiology, right? 不是二声的，it's a question, right? If you repeat a word as a question, people understand. Oh, you don't know that word. Okay. And then they can try to help you, right? Okay. What other problems could we have? One problem is words, vocabulary. But even there, maybe they use a word and you don't hear it right. Right? You don't you know the word, but when they say it, you don't know what they mean. Right? Okay. That one again?
Like British.
Okay, different accents. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah. Honestly, I don't understand a lot of British speakers. So, it's like in Taiwan. When you count to 10. When I first came to Taiwan, I couldn't hear the difference between these two numbers. Because 有人说1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8、10，有人说1、2、3、4、5、6、7、8、10。And if you don't hear the tones, then 4跟4、10跟10。Yeah. So there are accents in Chinese too. One way to deal with this is by choosing what you listen to. if the British accent is hard for you, then, you know, you can choose CNN instead of BBC. Personally, I don't always understand them, but I don't like CNN. They're too American for me. So, but there are other places where you can find a choice, right? There are different options. Well, what about, what kind of accents are hard for you? 哪一个英文的 how do you say this? 腔。哪一个英文的腔比较难？ Have you ever heard somebody from Texas talking? You know, Texas, that's the big state in the south. It's near Mexico. It's the big one. They have a lot of cows. They have a lot of oil. Texas? Okay, if you look on a map of the United States, it's in the bottom, okay? I don't know where most of the states are. I don't care. But this one is easy to see. And sometimes I don't understand them. They speak English, but I'm the tongue and 19, right? Or people in New York. I really can't understand them sometimes. Some of the people in New York, their accent is so, it feels like they have something in their mouth. And I just want to take some water and wash their mouths so I can hear them clearly. But, or in England, right? What do you think is the worst English accent? I agree, yeah. It's because they have a different syllable stress. And it makes it very hard to hear them, to understand what they're saying. So there's a lot of jokes in the West about taxi drivers. Because in Canada and the States, a lot of times, people from India or Pakistan, that part, we call that, well, sort of, call it the Near East, but it's Asia, but further west, right? Yeah, you know, around India. Because of how their language works, it has a lot of ups and downs, you know, a lot of, and because in English we need syllable stress, problems, right? 有重的音节，有轻的音节. And their language causes them to have an accent that changes that pattern. So they can be very hard to understand. So it's something that a lot of people make jokes about, because if you get into a taxi in America, for one thing, don't use taxis in the States. It's too expensive. Taiwan taxi 真的很便宜, right? They're really great here. In the West, taxis it's better to walk. But a lot of times, we can't understand the driver. You can tell him where you want to go, and he will repeat